Well, hello there, welcome back to my channel. This is the Unintentional ASMR Book Club. If you're new here, welcome and thanks for joining in. You're just in time for the bedtime stories. Tonight's book is called The Ocean at the End of the Lane. So this is a continuation of the previous video which I did, so this will be part 4. So I'm gonna continue where I left off. So let's begin. The only thing that had kept me from running screaming from the chamber of horrors as I was led around it was that none of the waxworks had looked fully convincing. They could not truly look dead because they did not ever look alive. The thing in the back seat that had been covered by the blue blanket, I knew that blanket. It was the one that had been in my old bedroom on the shelf for when it got cold. Was not convincing either. It looked a little like the opal miner, but it was dressed in a black suit with a white ruffled shirt and a black bow tie. Its hair was sleeked back and artificially shiny. Its eyes were staring. Its lips were bluish, but its skin was very red. It looked like a parody of health. There was no gold chain around its neck. I could see underneath it, crumpled and bent, my copy of Smash with Batman looking just as he did on the television on the cover. I don't remember who said what then, just that they made me stand away from the Mini. I crossed the road and I stood there on my own while the policeman talked to my father and wrote things down in a notebook. I stared at the Mini. A length of green garden hose ran from the exhaust pipe up to the driver's window. There was thick brown mud all over the exhaust, holding the hose pipe in place. Nobody was watching me. I took a bite of my toast. It was burnt and cold. At home, my father ate all the most burnt pieces of toast. Yum, he'd say, and charcoal, good for you, and burnt toast, my favorite. And he'd eat it all up. When I was much older, he confessed to me that he had not ever liked burnt toast, had only eaten it to prevent it from going to waste, and for a fraction of a moment my entire childhood felt like a lie. It was as if one of the pillars of belief that my world had been built upon had crumbled into dry sand. The policeman spoke into a radio in the front of his car. Then he crossed the road and came over to me. "Sorry about this, Sonny," he said. "There's going to be a few more cars coming down in this road in a minute. We should find you somewhere to wait that you won't be in the way. Would you like to sit in the back of my car again?" I shook my head. I didn't want to sit there again. Somebody, a girl, said, "He can come back with me to the farmhouse. It's no trouble." She was much older than me, at least 11. Her red-brown hair was worn relatively short for a girl, and her nose was snub. She was freckled. She wore a red skirt. Girls didn't wear jeans much back then. not in those parts. She had a soft Sussex accent and sharp grey-blue eyes. The girl went with a policeman over to my father, and she got permission to take me away. And then I was walking down the lane with her. I said, "There is a dead man in our car." "That's why he came down here," she told me. "The end of the road. Nobody's going to find him and stop him around here. 3 o'clock in the morning. And the mud there is wet and easy to mold. Do you think he killed himself?" "Yes. Do you like milk? Gran's milking Bessie now." I said, "You mean real milk from a cow?" And then felt foolish, but she nodded reassuringly. I thought about this. I'd never had milk that didn't come from a bottle. I think I'd like that. We stopped at a small barn where an old woman, much older than my parents, with long grey hair like cobwebs and a thin face, was standing beside a cow. Long black tubes were attached to each of the cow's teats. "We used to milk them by hand," she told me, "but this is easier." She showed me how the milk went from the cow down the black tubes and into the machine, through a cooler and into huge metal churns. The churns were left on a heavy wooden platform outside the barn, where they would be collected each day by a lorry. The old lady gave me a cup of creamy milk from Bessie the cow, the fresh milk before it had gone through the cooler. Nothing I had drunk had ever tasted like that before. Rich and warm and perfectly happy in my mouth. I remembered that milk after I had forgotten everything else. "There's more of them up the lane," said the old woman suddenly. "All sorts coming down with lights flashing and all. Such a palaver. You should get the boy into the kitchen. He's hungry, and a cup of milk won't do a growing boy." The girl said, "Have you eaten?" "Just a piece of toast. It was burnt." She said, "My name's Letty Hamstock. This is Hamstock Farm. Come on." She took me in through the front door and into their enormous kitchen, sat me down at a huge wooden table, so stained and patterned that it looked as if faces were staring up at me from the old wood. "We have breakfast here early," she said. "Milking starts at first light, but there's porridge in the saucepan and jam to put in it." She gave me a china bowl filled with warm porridge from the stove top, with a lump of homemade blackberry jam, my favorite, in the middle of the porridge. Then she poured cream on it. I swished it around with my spoon before I ate it, swirling it into a purple mess, and was as happy as I have ever been about anything. It tasted perfect. A stocky woman came in. Her red-brown hair was streaked with gray and cut short. She had apple cheeks, a dark green skirt that went to her knees, and Wellington boots. She said, "This must be the boy from the top of the lane. Such a business going on with that car. There'll be 5 of them needing tea soon. Letty filled a huge copper kettle from the tap. She lit a gas hob with a match and put the kettle onto the flame. Then she took down 5 chipped mugs from a cupboard and hesitated, looking at the woman. The woman said, "You're right, 6. The doctor will be here too." Then the woman pursed her lips and made a noise. "They've missed the note," she said. "He wrote it so carefully too, folded it and put it in his breast pocket, and they haven't looked there yet." "What does it say?" asked Letty. "Read it yourself," said the woman. I thought she was Letty's mother. She seemed like she was somebody's mother. Then she said, "It says that he took all the money that his friends had given him to smuggle out of South Africa and bank for them in England, along with all the money he'd made over the years mining for opals, and he went to the casino in Brighton to gamble, but he only meant to gamble with his own money. And then he only meant to dip into the money his friends had given him until he had made back the money he had lost. And then he didn't have anything," said the woman, "and all was dark." "That's not what he wrote, though," said Letty, squinting her eyes. "What he wrote was, 'To all my friends, I'm so sorry. It was not like I meant to, and hope you can find it in your hearts to forgive me, for I cannot forgive myself.'" "Same thing," said the older woman. She turned to me. "I'm Letty's ma," she said. "You'll have met my mother already in the milking shed. I'm Mrs. Hempstock, but she was Mrs. Hempstock before me, so she's old Mrs. Hempstock. This is Hempstock Farm. It's the oldest farm hereabouts. It's in the Domesday Book." I wondered why they were all called Hempstock, those women, but I did not ask, any more than I dared to ask how they knew about the suicide note, or what the opal miner had thought as he died. They were perfectly matter-of-fact about it. Letty said, I nudged him to look in the breast pocket. "He'll think he thought of it himself." "There's a good girl," said Mrs. Hempstock. "They'll be in here when the kettle boils to ask if I've seen anything unusual and to have their tea. Why don't you take the boy down to the pond?" "It's not a pond," said Letty. "It's my ocean." She turned to me and said, "Come on." She led me out of the house the way we had come. The day was still grey. We walked around the house, down the cow path. "Is it a real ocean?" I asked. "Oh yes," she said. We came on it suddenly. A wooden shed, an old bench, and between them a duck pond, dark water spotted with darkweed and lily pads. There was a dead fish, silver as a coin, floating on its side on the surface. "That's not good," said Letty. "I thought you said it was an ocean," I told her. "It's just a pond, really. It is an ocean, she said. We came across it when I was just a baby from the old country. Letty went into the shed and came out with a long bamboo pole with what looked like a shrimping net on the end. She leaned over, carefully pushed the net beneath the dead fish. She pulled it out. But Hamstock Farm is in the Domesday Book, I said. Your mom said so. And that was William the Conqueror. Yes, said Letty Hamstock. She took the dead fish out of the net and examined it. It was still soft, not stiff, and it flopped in her hand. Alright, so that was part of the chapter 2. I hope you enjoyed that reading. My eyes are closing right now. And if you do, give it a like and do share it with someone you think would enjoy listening to this kind of reading. And also don't forget, if you haven't collected my NFT yet, there are 5, so you might want to check them out. I put a link down below in the description so you can have a look and see. So it's late. I wish you well and have a great evening, and I gotta go. See you in the next video. Goodbye.